All right, everyone, welcome back. It looks like our speakers are all settled in online and in person, so we're going to get started. Find a seat, please make yourself comfortable for this roundtable with Roma journalists on reporting and translating. We're so happy to have Branko join us online virtually to participate in this roundtable conversation with our guests around the table here. As always, we hope this to be an interactive session, so those of you hanging out in the audience with us here online or in person, just jump into the conversation with a raised hand. We'll get a microphone to you, and if you're online, you're more than welcome to raise a virtual hand and we'll call on you to speak. All right, I'll be spotlighting all of our guests now and welcoming you into the conversation. Over to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. No?
One, two. Okay, now it's working. Thank you very much. Welcome to our panel, to Roundtable, and to our discussion. And I'm very glad today to speak about media, about social media, and about translating. First of all, I want to say hello to my colleagues on my left side, close to my heart, yeah. My older colleagues, actually, and we will give you some different perspective from different times and from different types of media, actually. So, with me today, Jedina Tahirovic-Sirčić, Orhan Galjuš, and my dear colleague Branko from Belgrade, from Radio Televizija Serbia, Belgrade. And I want to say hello to all people who are watching us via Zoom. I don't like PowerPoint presentation, but I have my presentation here. Just a second. Just a second. I want to share. Share. Oh, sorry. Yep. So, as you saw on the title, today we will talk about three, I need to say, important things about reporting, about translating, and about social media. So, although it seems a little bit paradoxically, but we need to make a context, because today we will talk about minority media, about Roma media, and about Roma journalists. We will talk about and about journalism in Roma community, and about maybe history of Roma journalism. So, first thing is reporting. I will try to give one short introducing through my media, which I'm editor-in-chief and journalist. So we will start with reporting, and this is Portal Nevipe. In original, it's not in English language, but I'm thanks to the Google Translate, I'm translating him on English language, and you can see some titles, part of some articles, and you can see diversity. It's not topics just about Roma. It's about last week we had a Pride March in Sarajevo. We talk about language. We talk about I don't know, some conferences and etc. So 5 or 6 years ago, when we started to talk about our project, about our media, my idea was to building him on three pillars. First pillars is reporting, actually information. So informational pillar is most important. We talk about media here, so we need to inform our people, but not just our people. We need to inform what's going on in Roma community and mainstream community. So because of that, we include in our crew young generation of Roma journalists from Roma community on one side, and on second side some journalists from mainstream community, some ex-colleagues, and they together working on some topics about Roma. So after a couple of years, I recognize that mainstream journalists starting to their media, home media, to talk and to write articles about Roma, not just through our portal, but in his own media, in his home media. It's a little success. On second side, from our crew, from young Roma journalists, some mainstream media recognize our young journalist and take him in their media, and it's impact. I believe that it's impact. So we talk here about reporting through online media, but it's now in past maybe 10 or 15 years, but maybe 40 years ago, starting era of Roma journalism, and most important media was a radio, and Orhan and Hedina starting to work on radio. No, Emma, but your first experience was on radio. Yes, one of first experience actually. So I would like to hear from you about your experience 35, 40 years ago when you started to be a journalist. I'm sorry if I'm talking about your age, but yeah, okay. But if you can compare your experience from that years and now, and to make some parallel about challenges, about how we did we change something in our relation through topics, through a way how we reporting about Roma and for Roma.
I take as a joke that Dalibor and Hedina talks about the age. I'm proud that I'm 67. I am very proud. I'm proud about why. You know that each 1,000 Rom lives more than 61. Among Roma, this is one of the features that we, in general, when I say we, a lot of Roma communities around the world know that we don't live more than 61 years. My 3 uncles died 59, 60, 61. My papa 74, and then I don't know. But I'm proud that I'm 67. Why? I managed in my life through my family to be who I am today. And today I'm a journalist, and I belong to those pioneers that in the world we made a step forward, and we are fighting. We are militant Roma. When I say me, that means Jan Hancock, Hristo Kuchikov here, Nazek, and so on. We know exactly what we want. This is the first. Second, why I become a journalist and how. I was a 5 years old boy. We were living in a house of 4 rooms, 2 floors. And usually we were sitting in a grandfather's room. And in grandfather's room was a monumental tool. That was a radio, the box, the radio that we can listen all the program. And me as a boy of 5, I was always going around that box, wanted to see how it is possible in such small box, people to enter in and to have news or whatsoever, a speech, and then music, how those instruments in and so on. And one day nobody was in the room, and I started to look on the back side of the box, and the radio box fall down. Of course, I was very unhappy, afraid. And then my grandfather Ahmed went into, and he looked at me, gave me a smile. Radio was not broken. And he said, what you wanted to see? I said, people. Can you help them? Maybe somebody crush a leg or something. And he said, everything is fine. Now we check, and he was checking radio, is working. Do you want to enter in radio? And I said, yes, I want that, to be as those who are speaking in. And I think I got immediately this miracle. This miracle was in our elementary school. I was 7. I didn't know what means this to have to handle and to talk. I was the best in the class among Serbians. Every day, my father and my mom, with grandfather, they say, you go to school, today you'll be best, and again tomorrow. But it was end of the year, and my teacher, a Serbian teacher, she came and she said that I'm the best anchor in Serbian language. I didn't know what means that in Serbian is speaker. I didn't know what means speaker. So then I had the real idea and a project that one day I will be a radio journalist. My first radio program started in 1981 in Belgrade with Nusret Seharsoy, with Dragulj Vacković, with my brother Becky. We were a first team who went into a building where first independent radio in Serbia, ex-Yugoslavia, was called Studio B. Studio B was an independent radio unit still today. And we started to make a radio program in Romani. The world was shocked to listen Romani, to read the news and so on. Today I have about 4,000 hours of live program. I do speak in Romani, of course, this is my main language in the radio. And I do speak other languages as well. So through my activism, I have managed to get very close to the various journalistic institutions, and on top, I must say here, we get in cooperation with European Broadcasting Union, with Eurovision, because Eurovision in projects and programs on diversity, they do help member states on various programs in various languages, European languages. And Radio Patrin, the radio that I am doing still today from Amsterdam, we had managed that to include other Roma radios or radio in Romani language, to be active, getting much more involved, especially in the field of freedom of expression. So we have contributed in Europe, maybe around over the world, that these minority radios, I wouldn't call them, but I would rather say radios in diversity in languages that we are using. It's something in the history of the journalism even very new, and still the journalist, we are and journalist and activist in the same time. Well, in many societies, journalists are good activists, mainly. So getting to the history of Romani media and my experiences, being in Belgrade, in ex-Yugoslavia, I learned that Svetozar Simic in 1936 organized first newspaper about Roma and for Roma. And he said, and a key word there, the Roma would buy the newspaper Romano Lil, and Roma will start to read, but unfortunately, Roma are so poor, they can't buy newspaper. And that's why he said that his first task having such radio is to give information about Roma to the mainstream society. From 1936 until today, there are hundreds of Romani media outlets. In general, Romani media, radio and television programs, they have no professional capacity to do such program that mainstream media would take or have an eye on. One of the problems among Roma media and mainstream media is that mainstream media never quote Romani media. Why? There is no loyalty, there is no trust, there is no building kind of professional relations among Romani media and so on. Well, on individual level, yes, we have a journalist. Simply we can work with mainstream media as I do. For example, there is a program in Amsterdam about diversity issues and dialogue. So very often I have a program about the others in Amsterdam to speak about the people who are invisible and so on. One of the issues that I'm facing as a Rom is that there is a stigma, he's a Roma journalist, that I don't like that at all. But historically, again, I believe that these initiatives has born in communications something new. What is that? It is that we Roma, we can communicate in Romani language and then translate our programs in many other national languages. That's why we can reach, for example, we in Amsterdam, we do make a program about human rights or rights of Roma. So once I had a very interesting program talking to a lawyer from Chile, a Rom, who spoke to me very well in Romani language and explaining the rights of Roma in a country or in Latin America and so on. So our program looked like a global program. And the idea about my experience is that, well, I use a lot of kind of settings and knowledge from London Metropolitan University, where I made my master on globalization, communication, and so. Those professors, especially a professor from India, she is an expert on Bollywood issues. So I enter into that unit to see how they function, why Bollywood is better from Hollywood, how Bollywood makes better profit than Hollywood, and so on. And then, as I said today, looking at the 20 million Roma, how we can make a marketing of radio. So I choose my radio to have a brand, a name, called Radio Patrin. Patrin was very old communication among Roma, where Roma had to travel and to communicate among themselves. So they had this messenger, or say WhatsApp, 250 years ago, making communication with various settings of natural things and living in special places to inform the other group that would travel. So I made an old version of communication called Patrin, a modern version of that Patrin. That's why my radio and other programs that I'm using to make much closer and better new modern communication among Roma and non-Roma as well. So that is my target group, as you said. And in this end of introductory, I'm very happy to tell you that I have opportunity to talk to famous journalists. Christiane Amanpour from CNN. We had 3-4 years ago a very bad conversation about reporting, because she was reporting from Pristina when started the war that gypsies are looting houses, and immediately Albanians were attacking Romani people in Pristina and so on and so. And that cost a lot. And then I was, we met in Belgrade with Christiane Amanpour, and I was asking her about the ethics, about the code of ethics, and so on. She looked at me, "Are you rich?" she said to me. "So you make better television and radio from me, then we talk." I was very angry on that. Those mainstream journalists that are friendly to us, journalists who have a Romani background, are very important for us. Why? We are trying in many ways to connect with mainstream media. And that's why I think it's very good result. And still we have to work with the Eurovision, with the European Broadcasting Union, in sense of how, in which kind of professional level we journalists, we can refer and send our reports in Romani or other languages.
Thank you. Thank you.
Orhan, thank you very much. I'm so glad to share this table with you, and generally that's the proof that we have our roots, journalistic roots, and our journalistic background. Yeah. So Hedina, your experience is from Sarajevo, from Radio Sarajevo. You're starting on late 80s and early 90s with your program on Radio 2. And before you starting with discuss, I need to say that media is very, very important part and very important ally to all of us through our struggle, which starting many years ago. But without media, especially now in this world of social media, of online media, without media, our struggle is impossible. So, Hedina, please, could you share your experience with us, and how it was to start to work on Cividom? Cividom we call radio televizija building in Sarajevo. It's mean some koja boja ono bude ono gray home, because it's a old building, gray building with all radio television in Sarajevo, public services in Sarajevo.
This is actually a metaphor for prison, because the word there in Bosnia and Herzegovina existed gray home for the prisoners, for criminals, and they were put in. And our building, Radio Television Sarajevo, was in gray color, and everything is beton. Actually, how I started. As a child, I was living with my 5 sisters in one room. We were 7 persons in one room, but somehow I became like a wonder child in my family. And this is thanks to my father, because he always gave me opportunity not to do homeworks like washing dishes and helping mother. He is always telling like, let Dina to read, let Dina to write, because he saw in me someone who is going to write his history, his family history. As a child, I remember that he always tried to write who was his father, what they did, what they made, and how tradition was in our home, and what did his mother's side, because they were mixed communities, Romani communities. My grandfather was like Ari, but with Gurbeti dialect, and my grandma was Chergash Romani with Ha articulation in speaking Romani. And he always mentioned about brevity of my grandmother, which is very seldom, but which is very important to Chergash Romani community because of matriarchat. There has a woman something to say. It was in the family that my father was raised in. Then I started to get good notes in the schools, and my father just told, you have to go further in your education. And when I came to faculty of politics to study journalism, he told me, please don't say you are a Romani, because you wouldn't get the place in faculty. What should I do? Of course, I have to listen to my father, and I got the place. And after I finished journalism, after I got a journalism degree in 1985, actually I was the first journalist of Romani origin in the origin of ex-Yugoslavia. I started to work on a radio program Lačo Žive Romalen, but there was a problem. The problem was that in my family nobody spoke Romani. My mother was a Catholic, but she spoke more Romani than my father, who was a Rom. And then I started to search the words for test, because we had to pass the test in order to be hired for radio, you know. And I started in our mahala to ask for words, how to translate certain informations from the new magazines, you know, from news, etc. And somehow I managed that. When I started to work radio program, first what I did was that I was sent to Ašunen Romalen Radio Beograd Studio B. And I was meeting Beki Galjuš, Orhan's brother, Ali Riza Agushi, and the editor-in-chief of this program, Dragoljub Acković, who didn't speak or who hasn't spoken how to say English at all until today. And I started slowly, you know, slowly. They were laughing on me when I was talking in Romani, because I exchanged the, you know, some words I didn't know exactly, but they were also of the other dialect than I was. I was used to listen all the time Gurbeti dialect and Chergash, that Chergashers are talking. How to manage that? Then I told that to the editor-in-chief of the main radio station, how I found between them and what should I do, because we have to produce some kind of content of the program that should be really interesting to the public, you know. Then we started to build mosaic program of the mosaic program. It was going about news, about culture. There were interviews in Romani. There were also like poetry or some old stories, and of course music. You have to divide time that is not too how to say, too langweilig in German, langweilig. That you kept your publicum listening to you. Then I was sent to Tetovo. In Tetovo in Macedonia, there was a first radio program actually produced by Remzi Mersimi in 1978. No, 63. No. No. No.
No. There are facts. 1963, I was 8 years old. We were listening to that program in prison in Kosovo.
Okay, would you like to say? I know that was 1978, but anyway, I went to Tetovo, and I've met Remzi Mersimi, and I spoke to him how he was working, because he was also a teacher in the school. After that, I went to Pristina, where our people made a program in 1983. There was editor-in-chief Alija Kresnici, who is now a very known and popular writer living in Subotica. And then visiting also a television program called Anglunipe, which is the start, the beginning, which was produced by editor-in-chief Luan Koka and a team from him, of course. And somehow I gathered this experience, and I came back to Sarajevo, and I worked for 6 years. But what is important at that part? It is important actually that I had to work bilingual. Because editor-in-chief of the program likes to have control about the content of the program. They ask me if, example, any content in Romani is, I have to translate that in Bosnian language and give to the publicum to know what is going about in the program. It was really like censura. Censorship was very, very common at that time. But what is also important for that time is that we all were, that actually I was hired, and I guess the other also, by national radio. And I got my payment according to my qualification. I was a diploma journalist, I was editor-in-chief, and I got a payment exactly like the other diploma journalists and editor-in-chiefs are getting according to their quotes, you know. And that was something what was really good. And after the war in Bosnia, I don't hear that any of Romani or journalists of Romani origin actually got this situation like we had before the war. At that time also, I started to work on the television program, which is called Malavipe, which content was exactly made like for the radio program, but visual. But then started the war. I have to go away. With this, with war, actually was closed a chapter of my life as a journalist at that point, but not exactly completely, because I have to leave Bosnia. I have to leave the language, the people, the family, and everything what I had really close to me, and to adapt into German society with my children, and later on in Canadian society, because I have to go just to escape deportation and be again in Bosnia and bringing my children again in Bosnia. Then in Canada, I started to work, or actually I was editor, and Kako Ron Lee was editor-in-chief on of the first Romani magazine for Roma in the territory of Canada, called Romanolil. I think that Nazik remembers this time when she came like really a girl to Toronto with her parents. That was a really good experience. But anyway, in all those cases that I experienced doing as a journalist, bilingualism and translation was in a question. I have to also, I also like to mention Čavori Kanolil, which was in Serbia produced in Gornji Milanovac. That was really also, I think, the only experience for the Romani children in our ex-country, which has to be mentioned in that place.
Thank you, Hedina.
Edina, one more time. Thanks to these two discussions, I believe that we made some context, some frame that we have, how to say, history of Roma journalism. I didn't mention on the beginning that I starting with my journalistic career 18 years ago. 18 years ago on first Roma radio television station in Southeast Serbia, in Niš, and I was totally surprised. I was. It was first time for me to see and to meet Roma anchors who fluently speak Roma language and fluently reading news on Roma language. It was amazing for me because it was my first touch with Roma journalist, and after that it was my first and only experience in Roma media. After that I was working in so many mainstream media in Serbia, especially in past 14 years in Sarajevo. Generally, I'm investigative journalism, and I was awarded by European Union for investigative journalism, and it's my specialist, investigative journalism. But and I never said during my career that I'm a Roma journalist. Orhan already mentioned that that things about are we Roma journalists, are we journalists? I never said that I'm Roma journalist. We are here journalists, and I really believe that Branko really want to tell something about are we journalists, are we Roma journalists, are we journalists, Roma journalists who working on mainstream media, and who we are actually.
Hi everyone, once again, I'm Branko Đurić. If there is a need to tell about myself, who am I and what I'm doing as a journalist. I'm editor-in-chief actually in the Romani TV redaction in a national broadcasting company. It's a media national service of Serbia. And since last year, we have that TV redaction. Before that, I was editor-in-chief of already mentioned Romani redaction within the radio Belgrade 1, which is also part of national broadcast company in Serbia. If it is a matter of fact, actually, that Romano TEM, our Romani program within the radio, is the most long-lived Romani program in the history, I think. More than 20 years, 22 years, we have that program, bilingual program in the mainstream media. And I take that as a great result. The honor goes to Dragoljub Ackovic, who is mentioned also, and he is the founder of that radio. Back to your question, Dalibor, Romani journalism. Is it necessary to say Romani? Journalism is journalism. But I guess that it is dependent on which angle we will take when we are talking about Romani journalism. There is a need of Romani journalism if we take that as a part of general program. If we have affirmative measures about Romani population in every European country, in every country in the world, I guess. Why? Because Roma population is really underestimated. Romani population needs to be supported additionally to take that position in the same level as other ethnic groups. In that frame, in that case, it is okay to talk about Romani journalism as engaged journalism. We have that fact, engaged journalism. It's a journalism, let's say like this, a journalism with a mission. So we as a Roma journalist, we have additional mission. Of course, we have to be objective. We have to tell the truth all the time, and that's a commonplace for every journalist. But besides that, we have to have that in that common mind, common goal. That with our journalism, our work, we have to push forward our ethnic group in order to take that position that provides a normal life, not better life than other, but normal life as other majority and common population in every country. We know all about many problems that tackling Roma people. When we just mentioned history, Roma journalism history. We have here doyens among us, Hedina and Orhan, and so on. But also we mentioned Svetozar Simic. I think that Orhan mentioned him, and I think that Svetozar Simic is, let's say, the father of Romani journalism in this part of the world and of the Europe. His magazine, Romano Lil, was issued, and in one of the numbers of one of the magazines, we could find such a news. Let me just shortly to read you some paragraph and to make a point there. They, the gypsies, just to mention that it is 1935. Orhan, maybe you are wrong with 36. I think that it's 1935 when the first Romano Lil was issued and published, printed. So it is written in that magazine. They, the gypsies, make houses, or better say slums. The non-Roma locals hardly can stand Roma people and often came to tear down their slums. Roma then go to other village, and if lucky, they find place and stay to live there on the edge of the village in order to not disturb the other inhabitants. Sounds so actual, isn't it? it sounds like it is written in a Today magazine or newspapers or something like that. That is the reason why we as Romani journalists have to be a little bit, how can I say, of fans, engaged journalists, and to try to move things and to make things better for Roma people. How could we do that? That could be a special part of that discussion. Reporting, you, Dalibor, mentioned that reporting. What kind of reporting should we exercise and make to do such a goal, to meet such a goal, and to make to our people better life, and to send that better vision of about Roma people among the majority public. Maybe that will be for this part of discussion enough. And Dalibor, you can go further to.
Okay, thank you, Branko. Thank you very much. Before we starting to talk about role of language and translating in Roma media, I think that it's necessary to ask one important question. Who are our consumers? Consumers for whom we making our articles, writing our articles, just for Roma, only for Roma, for mainstream media, for mainstream consumers, and for Roma and for mainstream consumers. From my perspective, it's important to inform and our people, our communities, and mainstream public too, because on mainstream media they don't have opportunity very often to find some articles or to watch or to hear some reportage about Roma. Maybe there is a so-called journalism which is how to say, just for some holidays, for example, for Đurđevdan or for 8th of April, or for some holidays of Roma, and just for in that case, mainstream media reporting or writing some articles about Roma, or if they reporting about some projects or about very big conferences in Sarajevo, Pristina, Zagreb, etc. But daily and producing of articles, program for Roma and about Roma in mainstream media, it's mission impossible still. But I want to ask you, Orhan and Hedina too, and later Branko, who is generally our consumers? Actually, who need to be our consumers, maybe better.
Actually, in a case that I was working or dealing with the radio and television program, I had both. I had Roma listeners and public, and also non-Roma. I got a lot of letters with requests to some answers. So I called, I actually very often acted as a social worker for own people, for own community, calling into program alive people from institutions or people who are really responsible for some kind of questions, like about housing, like about employment, about cultural stuff, because it wasn't so usually at that time to get any kind of huge help to organize like very progressive NGO. because nothing was paid at that time. It was after the war, actually, my experience that many NGOs got money for their work, and there were professionals, Roma, who were paid for that what they are doing, organizing community management, doing project about culture, about language, etc. I think that we reached a lot, especially in the area of ex-Yugoslavia, but I could for sure say in the area of Bosnia and Herzegovina. But war stopped us for doing that for the future. You remember when I came back after the war in Sarajevo, I actually went to a radio station with you, because we were thinking about revitalize our programs and to do again. And we asked them to do that without any payment. We don't need to be paid just to give us a space and technique that we are producing the programs. It wasn't possible. They told us, yeah, but you have to pay that. How to pay in national television or for national radio, like you are not allowed to get national money as a minority, but you have right that. This is a human right. This is actually procedure that they should produce the programs for minority languages. But in our case, that was it was nothing to do with that. And we are now in 2023, and we don't have any national program, nothing in any national media. We don't have even newspaper for Roma, bilingual or monolingual, it doesn't matter. We don't have anything, just to thank some NGOs like he has, which get some grants to open up a portal or online newspaper and or producing programs over internet, online programs. But so much about the social media and that kind of work, I really don't know. I would be honest, because after the war, I started to write. I'm a writer, a poet, and currently also in the last maybe 10 years, I'm investigating for academia, thanks to Debbie Folleran, who showed me the path in academical world. And I would call Rocco, how is your name, to come here and to join us, because you are the young person and you could talk about social media much more than I'm talking now. Please, could you come? On the young persons, the world is... Okay. Thank you, Delva.
Okay. Before we starting, please join us. Please join us. Please join us before you share your experience of social media and about your knowledge, which you can share with us. I would like to ask Orhan too about our consumers and about our public.
I mean, this type of interviews or however panels, I don't think that would bring us something very fruitful discussion. Because the questions, when I saw the email from Debbie, we had to cover other questions. But however, who are our consumers? When I see microphone in radio now, I see Roma, but the strategy, the technique, the setup, it's always making bilingual radio. So the Romani and mainstream language. And this we have done and still works in Kiev, in Mersin in Turkey, in Portugal. And so those radios are more or less 10 years, and they are working. Very special radio in Prague, kind of green television as well, works in a way that both sides are, say, consumer, the listeners. And there are great results, but still, I think that I think on the first day I said the idea of syndicating Romani media, then belong to professional world and how we can do that and so on, how we can cooperate with small and big media outlets around the world, how we can prepare the coming generation being a journalist and so on. Looking at Christo, now I hope you remember, thanks to that, I was employee of the George Soros Foundation. We have made a project, wonderful project, radio project in the school. And more or less it was about 800 pupils covered by the project. And from those 800, today in Bulgaria, there are 8 mainstream journalists, well-known journalists in Bulgaria who are doing their job. Similar happened thanks to the program that we have done, educating the journalists, the Roma who want to become journalists. George Soros Foundation had a program called I Want to Be a Voice of Our People, in that sense. And thanks to Independent Center for Journalism in Budapest, Prague, and Bratislava, we educated 110 journalists. They are still working. From other side, maybe it's important to say who the customers are. Let me tell you how we did in 1981, when was that one of the first ever programs at the Studio B in Belgrade. Before to start that radio program, we had many meetings with the heads of the Studio B, and especially we consumed time to find out what is the time slot, how many minutes will we program, what is the percentage of music that we will make through, which kind of music. And as well, we said also how we can market Romani language. I believe you both, Hedina, and you know very famous journalist Dusan. What was his family name? Whatever. He was icon for Belgrade. Beograd, dobro jutro.
Duško Radović.
Duško Radović, yes. Thank you. So together with him, our program was from 8 to 9 morning on Sunday. Usually on that time, many housewives, many house ladies were going to market, green market, to buy to Zeleni Venac. And then we saw how Dusan was looking through his window from 23rd floor. Nobody was in market. They were listening Ashton Romalen. We were happy, of course. And all these things, the experience, then looking at who are your customers, listeners. Same happened in Kiev, Radio Chiriclo. Same happened in Mersin. Same happened in Portugal. But there is still I might say, a professional development. There is a need, to bring a good capacity on that. And this, I think, may suffer how many viewers you have. Well, thanks to Google engineers, today when I make a program, I think I'm catching no less than 100,000 people. Because I know I'm preparing actually my marketing before to have any broadcasting, because they are the most important for me. The most important is Romani families that will listen my program. And Radio Patrin exists from 1991.
Great, great. First of all, thank you. So you remind me on email and question which Debbie sent us, but I wanted to make some context, and I really believe that it was necessary to ask this question: who is our consumers? Because of next question. Because of language and because of translating. And I really want to hear about Branko, about your challenges to making and to produce a program on the Romani language. How is hard or is it hard to make a program on Romani language? Because my question about our consumers was related to our culture. First of all, our culture of reading or watching television, but reading newspapers for information, watching television for information, not to say some I don't know, funny programs and some movies and some music and etc. Or to find in I don't know, in newspapers some sports information and etc. But I'm talking about our culture of reading newspapers, watching central information television journey on national TV station. So if we have our culture of information on one side and your challenges of producing a Romani program on Romani language, is it possible to produce informative program 100% just on Roma language and to inform our people on the Romani language? My question. First, Branko, and please be my guest.
It's not easy to answer so simply on that question, Dalibore. My experience during my radio journalism activities was that our consumers were more non-Roma, Gadje, than Roma people. Although it is bilingual program, and it is still today bilingual program, and although there are more non-Roma Gadje people who are listening to our program than Roma people, we were wondering really, we spent hours and hours, days to find out how to attract especially young Roma to listen to our program. Our program in radio in Belgrade, in Serbia, is how Hedina said, it's a mosaic program. First part, hardcore information, let's say like that, and common information. The other part is talking about some issues with relevant interviewees. And the third part is, as a rule, cultural matter. Maybe it is not sufficient modern for young Roma people, but I think now, after so many years of working as a journalist, that we have to make, how can I say that, diversity of impact, diversity of media. What would be that? We have that his young colleague who is specialist on social media. That would be for sure obligate part of that what I am talking about. I am working in mainstream media, TV now, but I am absolutely aware that this is not enough. don't forget that Tamil Roma people are very practical people. Their need to survive is today absolutely a priority for them, as it was 20, 30 years ago and 100 years ago, just to survive. It is normal not to break their head with
Is Branko with us still? No. Okay, maybe later. Nico, you had to tell something about this question.
I just want to say, starting, that if we have to ask who our audience is first, I think we should focus more so why we are creating content, and essentially how can we change that narrative, if that makes sense. Because if we have mostly Gaje that are watching or listening or reading, then it's going to be difficult to integrate Roma to want to be part of that, because again, as Branko said, we're very practical people. Certain news things does not matter to Roma, and especially young Roma that are also living very similarly to how the older generations lived. Not everybody has that same education level, and so we should essentially find a way as what are we doing and why, I think, is the question that should be first asked, because essentially young Roma may not care about the certain things that go ahead, yeah.
No, go. Please.
That perhaps Gaji would care more so for. So I think that, again, the shift in the narrative would be a first step into engaging Roma in journalism and just in reading and being part of the news in general. And
Hannah, just a second. Orhan have something to say, and then you, please. Orhan, please.
Before I to do a program, minimum 7 days, then we are choosing headline. I'm going to Romani part of the city. I talk to them and I see what are the priorities or what they would like to listen, which kind of program. I talk to small children, and I talk to elderly as well, to young people. And I'm trying to find exactly how my program will be interesting. What is the interest of the audience that they would listen to Radio Patrin? Why Radio Patrin is so lovable, to say in that? This is all about settings and marketing that one has to think. And one Orhan is not at the radio program. I have my team. There are people who are working outside of the radio, and there are people who are in. And the nature of Radio Patrin is international audience. And in same time, the other colleagues, our correspondents, they are visiting Romani communities, but also visiting mainstream, people who's, I'm sorry? Oh, yes. Imagine this. So we are searching for our audience. And I don't have now to speak how we do that. Okay. But the point also is a Romani language. How we are translating. For example, we had N in 1981, but N today. We are entering and we get news via internet, something happened in the world very important. We do translate that news. And this is not just simple translation, it's specific translation. And so.
So you say that your consumers, your public is 100%, your audience 100% is Roma.
I wouldn't know. I am always happy if 51% is Roma and 49 Gaje. That's why we are catching. We are making possible that Gaje from mainstream society, we do sometimes program Roman English. And many people are interested about.
Okay.
And also, excuse me, we do separate our programs for children, for youth and elderly people, or it depends from the topic. We are preparing ourselves. What is our target group?
Okay, Hannah, you have a comments or question or question? Okay.
Purra kotumingye, all of you, for this panel, and it's really important. And also, thank you, Nishko, that you just kind of got up and took the helm without much notice. So I see you and I appreciate you. I have two questions. The first has to do with when Roma or Romani people who are in an area that doesn't have a lot of Romani people or many communities or a lot of the culture want to start their own news outlet. We have an expression in Yiddish which says Schande für die Goyim. Obviously, those of you who speak German know Schande, but it means like shame for the Jew who embarrasses us in front of non-Jews. And if there are, indeed 40, many non-Roma watching podcasts, reading the Romani news, either in Romani or about Roma people, are you expected to be a public ambassador for your people? How do you get the sort of education to talk about it? What are sort of the standards? An example I like to bring up is I live in Norway, and I'm Jewish, and I was raised in New York City, which is the largest Jewish colony outside of Israel. And so in Norway, there are 500 Jews, but there's a Jewish organization in Norway that likes to go around to all of the schools and talk to them about Judaism. Mm-hmm. And when I hear what they're saying about Judaism, it drives me crazy. Because to me, I'm like, no, this isn't correct. No, this isn't real. No, you guys don't know what you're talking about. And I recognize that's because I've had this privilege of growing up with Judaism and the culture and the knowledge and the language. But at the same time, I'm really happy that Norwegian Jews are wanting to reclaim that and present it. So how do you sort of balance that desire to do outreach with sort of not misrepresenting your people, or as we would say in Yiddish, bringing shame? My second question has to do with something you brought up, Nishko, which I thought was really good, about sort of Roma people being a practical people and sort of who are the consumers. And for this, I'd like to use the example of my boyfriend who is Sami, and he grew up Sami. He's like 100%, you do all the DNA tests you want. It's his mother language. He was raised in the most Sami town in Scandinavia. And he doesn't like to read the news in Sami because he would rather be doing Sami things than reading about them. So how do you combat that idea of, wanting to making the news something that, is helpful to doing Romani culture, doing Romani things, rather than something that, is not totally the same way?
If I can answer the second question. Now, again, I might be controversial, but that's just who I am, I guess. I think that perhaps making a lot of these academic conversations more accessible to Roma, because there are Roma that have these same ideas that I do. I'm not educated on this stuff. I don't know any formal Romano education other than growing up Roma. So for me, a lot of these academic questions doesn't necessarily need to be news reporting or journalism, but there could also be that sense of a conversation or information sharing amongst Roma, amongst the older people with the younger generation. And what is most important is that I think that every Roma person values their culture and their identity very strongly, and they like to know as much as they can on it, because we're all fragmented in different ways. And what I think would be a great way is to bring them through these, again, these academic things that are, look how not accessible. We have how many Roma in this room? Raise your hands. Tatu, bravo. And there are so much more, and they have no idea that this is happening. So I think that these, again, these academic, these high level, quote unquote, conversations that we're having can be expanded to a much larger audience, because people do have the same ideas as I do. And again, I'm not a journalist. I'm not any of these things. Okay. So if I'm able to have this conversation, why can't anybody else? And why can't this be written down or spoken about?
Hannah, before I answer on your question, I would like to back to Branko, because he's again with us. Branko, can you proceed? Or
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I lost you for a moment. I'm sorry. Something happened with the connection. So just to close my idea, we have to use every possibility to get into media space as a Roma professionalist, and for that purpose we have to educate, and again to educate young Roma people to do the journalist job. Why? You know that our people cope with great prejudice, with great stereotypes, and that prejudice and stereotypes are stealing our future. Our Roma people are lacking opportunities just because of stereotypes and prejudice, and that problem is not our problem. You know that very well. As myself, it's a problem of Gaje, it's a problem of non-Roma people, majority people. So there is the problem on that side. In case to that be resolved, media is a great tool. It's a powerful tool. It's a tool for making a mindset. Let's say like that. So how can we do that? For example, my candidate the idea that overwhelming me for months, for years, is how to enter the mainstream media with the young Roma faces in a prime time. For example, RTS, the mainstream national broadcasting companies, with the Roma people, which would not speaking about Roma issues. Take note of that. Not only about, not primarily about Roma issues, but to be sports journalists, to be presenters of the news, to be weather forecast presenters, and so on and so on. That's the way. You know that this is a CNN and BBC model, inclusive media. When common people see every day in prime time one Roma face, beautiful and representative Roma face, on daily basis, to talk about non-Roma issues, to talk cleverly, educatedly about all kinds of issues, and besides that, it is a Roma. That's the best way to cope and to break that prejudice and stereotypes that are stealing our future. Mainstream media is a great tool, of course, social media too. Don't forget that municipality, grassroots media. I want to stress that. So we have to have our media, our young journalists on every level, and that platform, internet platform that I mentioned at the beginning, showing to our young colleague, expert for social media, have to connect all that kind of media. For example, I would like to see on that social platform information where one Roma could buy and to sell iron, for example. You know that many Roma are dealing with iron and with collecting garbages and so on. That is valuable information for him. he will be attracted on that social level to see his information that is very valuable and vital for him. And besides them, he could see something different, something that I make as a journalist, mainstream journalist, something that you are doing, Dalibor, as other kind of internet or a freelancer journalist, and so on and so on. I think that this is the best way to attract our Roma people, to make bridges among Roma community and non-Roma community, using every possibility that media offers.
Great, Branko. Great. I totally agree with you. And my dream is to see young Roma on mainstream public services. First of all, public services, because public services is media for all citizens. But my dream is to see them on national television, in prime time, in central informative program, to be anchor, and a couple minutes of that program will break all prejudice, all stereotypes. Despite a power of social media, I think that television have a power more than social media. I will try to answer on your question now, Hannah. I will give you answer from my perspective and from my journalistic and from my activistic perspective, and first of all and most important, from idea of our media. Why we started with our media? Because I realized in one moment that Roma people and topics about Roma was totally excluded from mainstream media. On one side, on second side, mainstream media is full with stereotypical, with full prejudice reporting and etc. And that was a sign that we need to do something. Okay, and I started to build a media portal, our portal on three pillars: reporting pillars. We are informative media, and second, educational pillar. And first and most important part of education role of our media was translating articles on Roma language, but not informing, not 100% informing, just education, because we started to educate our people to learn Roma language. And it was 6 or 7 years ago, and I started my cooperation with Hedina then. And third and important pillar too is activistic pillar, because our articles are promote some very important things. Promote something about Roma community, something from Roma community. So our articles have how to say activistic role, So I imagine a media, our portal, like a part of our generally struggle in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and the way how to hear a Roma voice from Roma community. Important. And one more thing, we discover some forgotten communities in Bosnia and Herzegovina. That people is invisible for mainstream media. Totally invisible. And we find a place through our portal, through our program, to show to all community, to show to all of us, mainstream and non-mainstream, that people exist in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and that was a way. So actually, NVP portal, NVP on Roma news is a tool for all people and voice for all people, in not just in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but in all countries of region where people spoke in Serbo-Croatian, Montenegrin language, and of course, Roma language. Nico, you wanted to say something?
Maybe not necessarily right on the. Oh,
Yep. If I could. So this is just my reaction to what has been said in the context of also the social media and the lectures that we had previously. And you know, when you said, Dalibor, that the TV has more power than the social media, I would say otherwise. I would say that the social media right now, at this stage of the development and digitalization that we are at as a society globally, you know, as a global village, someone would call it, the social media are getting much more attention and much more power, because they can target groups of people who do not usually watch TV. You know, watching TV is a lengthy is a lengthy procedure right now. People don't really have that much time, and so they would usually turn to social media such as TikTok, the Reels, Instagram Reels, you know, YouTube, and so on. So they can watch it as at their own leisure. And you know, when Nishko said that you know, the content and the speech of the content, the language of the content, you know, a lot of people would not. I don't want to demean the readers, right, and the public, but if we want to target and educate Roma across the globe, across the whole world, who we want to educate, who we want to give information to, we need to make that information accessible. So that means modifying the language to be easily digested by the public. What that means in terms of social media, in terms of the Romani media, is that we can literally create, you know, we can create media outlets and start sort of reviving the information output and the representation through the social media in a way that could be easily digestible, that could be available to people, because and that could be entertaining. You know, right now in the social media, you need to grasp the attention of the person in 3 seconds. You know, like the attention span of the people is decreasing with the IQ. Yeah, but it is. Yeah, but it is decreasing because there is this just information overload that we have, and so I think the social media are the way to do this. And it doesn't have to be just social media. You know, social media can be actually connected to the TV and to other platforms, so we can have, you know, cross platform that would address, you know, more public. Yeah, so that's it.
I just want to add, I don't know if you can see that photo. Yeah, you see, this is an app. You can go around of the world. You see how it's interactive? And here are thousands of radio programs. And this platform is made in Amsterdam, and Radio Patrin is here. You click here on the search, you get Radio Patrin or Radio Montreal if you want. So I love very much when my colleagues, friends, fellows speak about how to develop, but, thank you, excuse me. But I said to Orhan, I will be as two beautiful animals. One is octopus, and use the brain of octopus, and another is I will be a shark. Any Roma media does not develop, I'm going to buy them and use the capacity of the society to develop many other Romani media, as I did in Turkey and so on. Imagine in Turkey, 6-7 million Roma. And I will be very stupid if I don't consider this, that now what I'm doing, I'm trying to develop a Coke studio, so-called, is Coca-Cola marketing, and they have done incredible development of music through radio app that's called Coke Studio. And the Coca-Cola with experts have arranged new music in Nepal, India, and Bangladesh, and Pakistan as well. So for one song, I can show you just after, there are 3 million people, 300 million people. You know how much money is that? So this should be kind of an intention that developing our media is very much related to media marketing. We should be happy that today existence of social media, of all these opportunities that World Wide Web offers us. And even when, as we all do, we want to make translation. We kick to Google Translate or to other programs, and we are searching. But this has to be organized in our offices, in our activities, and so on. Well, we could find, I was talking today with our friend here, we could find another link, which is very important. We hear definitely very lovely, we say young Roma to be included, youth, and the elderly could sell as encyclopedia. And I believe this type of bridges that we have to do seriously then might be a fruitful production. We are a little bit politically lazy on fundraising, on educating future generation, not only about media, but with other disciplines as well. So I am recalling you, please keep in touch. Let's see which kind of projects to develop things. Be serious, professional. That's why I succeed. Even my kids are saying now, from where you have this origin, Papa? Stop, be home. But why I'm doing this? Because I see the hunger of our society, Roma communities. And there is no any more division if they like to read, if they like to watch or whatever. We have to educate the community to use new media technologies, to be our, as you say, I like it, consumers, and make them happy.
Yeah.
Dalibor,
Yeah.
if you let me just shortly to
Of course,
add.
Branko, of course.
So to conclude, it's not a question about whether social media or mainstream media are more powerful today. We are talking now about integrated media, all things together, okay? Let's put it very practical. If I'm talking about something on the mainstream media, I will do that on analytic way. For example, about economy and opportunities on the labor market for Roma people. I will call some expert and I will talk with him. And maybe for young people, it will not be so interested and attractive. But it takes a share of consumers, share of public who needs that analytics approach. Okay. From the other side, you as a freelancer you can make a short story, life story about a young man who succeed on that labor market. It's a short and available, very attractive story for a younger public, let's say. And that platform could put together all those approaches. And besides that, the consumer could find music, could find that service information about his livelihood, anything that is very important for him. That's why I'm talking about integrated media and all-together media.
Yeah, thank you, Branko. Daniel, I will try to answer. We need to talk about different types of media. If we talk about television, we're talking about informative media for information, and other side, social media. It's not 100% for information. Social media is for many things, but television is just for not just for information, but we collect information and take information from first of all from television. Why is maybe from my perspective, why is more powerful than social media still, despite the power of social media? Because still today in this modern era, technology era, when president of some state or government or some politician gives some statement on television on some central informative program, that is information. You know, that is information, and that's all. After that, some social media can criticize him, Twitter and I don't know, Facebook, etc. But people will accept that information from television, from that central informative program. So on the other side, of course, we will talk now about power of social media, but we need to make a, how to say, in our context, in Roma context, a discrepancy between 2 or 3 generations. We have here 3 generations of, how to say, of journalists. Branko and me, we are in some middle generation. We are a Facebook generation. Hedina and Orhan, they are first generation, one of first generation members of first generations of journalists. And you are someone who need actually to proceed and to start to develop social media and to produce information through social media. I'm someone from analog era. I like to write, to research, to find information, and to write very long articles with so many information. I can bore someone, but you can recognize a new perspective, a new power of social media. Because as me 10 or 15 years ago recognized power of online media, you know, but now your generation is very familiar with, I don't know, with TikTok, with Instagram, but especially with TikTok, who have very, how to say, it's a very powerful tool. How you will use TikTok? And I can ask you, did you translate information? Did you use actually Roma language to make some content on YouTube or Instagram? I don't know, you know better than me because I'm not using TikTok, but you can answer from your perspective, and you know your generation, you know your consumer, and what will you serve to them, what information you can give him. You need to be a journalist now in this era, in this from this perspective of social media, to produce some content for your generation, from your audience, from your consumers, but you need to be included in this. So Nico, if you have opportunity to be a journalist, you know, social media journalist, what can be your goal? And did you use Roma language to inform your generation about, I don't know, about something what happened here in Montreal or tomorrow in some other countries, etc.?
I have. I've spoken, I have cousins and friends that have had a lot less opportunities than I have. I consider myself very privileged in that manner. But what I think is more important right now is, and I'm going to answer your question, but it was ruminating on this. I wanted to say it, and it's mainly that I think another issue is the empowerment in the Roma community, because we live in a culture where a lot of people are very, I don't want to, say bad about our people, but a lot of defeatist attitude, that, we are Roma, there's nothing that we could do. And that is a reality, and we cannot ignore that. It happens with everybody that we know. And at some point, there needs to be that level of empowerment and that level of voice. And there also is the eradication of shame of the Roma identity that needs to be addressed. And until that shame is eradicated, there will be no voice. There will only be people who have educations that do not remember what it's like to not have these opportunities. And so what I do, and rather than giving news and telling people what's happening in Montreal or anything, and the friends that I do have, and we speak Romanes with each other, I speak to them on how they could get out of bad situations or how they could better their lives. And it's much more on an individual basis than a social media one, but perhaps at some point I'll gain enough traction to have this level of empowerment and the eradication of shame on a much more macroscopic level. But we take baby steps right now because I'm trying to unravel certain shame as well. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Branko, if you remember, we have an idea a couple years ago, Lela, Gilda, you and me, to starting with some, how to say, with some regional media, actually trans-Europe media, but we didn't make us very serious steps from that. But idea still is still working, because we a couple months ago or last year, I can't remember, we included more people in our story. But I was thinking very often about that idea, because first question was, and during our discussion was, how we will inform so many people on that territory, in which language, if we included Austria, if we include I don't know, Canada here, Serbia, I don't know, many countries from Europe, which language we will use on that media. And it was the first time when I starting to think of very, very serious about Roma language. But in that moment, we starting to ask questions. Okay, Roma language, but
Which one?
dialect. How we will dealing with the dialects.
Dalibore, just to inform you exclusively now, the idea of making such a regional project is working better than you think. Just to tell you that tomorrow I have a meeting with our colleagues, Roma journalists, and we are already established association of Roma journalists in Serbia. And it is just the beginning of cooperating among all of us in the region and more across the Europe, as you said. So one of the goals will be that on which language we will deal with our consumer, our public. Orhan is good in the Romani language. My father was Rajko Đurić. Many of you know what Rajko did on that sphere of language, Romani language. So many books, so many vocabularies, grammar, and so on about Roma language. So my experience as a journalist is that, imagine that in one day, I could speak with Roma in Argentina, and the same day, the other interview with Roma in Russia. Absolutely clear, understandable on Roma language. Different dialects, but we understand each other. That's a fortune, you know. We have a language that is understandable with slightly different dialects, but it's not a problem. You have that differences in any language, much more in German, for example. You know that those from Hanover cannot understand other parts of Germany at all, and so on. There are not such differences in Roma language. I absolutely assure you that it is like this. So it is just a common, how can I say, agreement of what will be the standardized dialect, or even that is not so much necessary. For example, we in Romani redaction in Radio Belgrade speak both two dialects for 22 years, Gurbeti and kako ga zovemo, Orhane, Arlej, kako se to kaže na engleskom, ne znam. I don't know in English how to say. So two dialects, but we use both of them and no problem, everything is working.
Great. Yes.
Branko, you know that we have a very big experience using dialects, and with your father, we were working at the Ashuden Roman, as you know, and then we talk in 1980s, 81, 2, 3, with Roma from all the continents in Romani language. Today, I do same. Simply, those experiences could serve positively, really could serve how to do this regional program, a kind of a project with Gilda, and it's already 10 years we are doing that project. And that's why I went out. 10 years for me is really a bit long time, you know, to implement something. Because, you know, the technology is so fast growing, media technologies, and we should take care about it. Well, I congratulate that still Radio Belgrade keeps those ideas and issues that you do develop things, but it is a gap in last years because Branko, I believe you know SIMO, Southeast European Media Organization, that has more than 500 journalists from the Central Eastern Europe, but also there is special task, Roma Task Force Group, Roma Media, you know. Maybe later we talk about, and let me tell you, soon I will be in Belgrade, we should sit down.
Thank you, Orhan. Thank you. Branko, I think it can be some kind of intersection where on one place, on one big project, can together work, and journalists on one side, and linguists, and translators, and everybody who are related to a language, because on the end, from my perspective, unification or standardization of our language is the main goal of that project, because we have a professional journalist, but we need to standardize our language. So Orhan, do you believe, because you are on one side and someone who are interpreter, and you speak so many dialects, and so you have so many experience in journalism and in translating Roma language, is it possible to make that media according to currently situation about standardization of our language?
Very nice question. That I don't want to say important question. I am, you know very well, and many of my friends, you know, I am coming from Kosovo, a town that is early dialect, full of Turcisms, and so on. Before to enter in studio, I realized I'm not speaking a language that would be understandable for the region that our program in Studio B reaches. So then was father of Branko. And then he looked at me with, Rajko Đurić was not always smiling because he took very serious issues. And he looked at me, give me a smile. And he said, now it's your responsibility to see how you Turkish speak Romani. From that day, still today, I do learn my own language. And thanks to that I speak Gajikane and Romani. So I made it possible to consider each dialect, thanks to my knowledge about the language. I made kind of a medium language. When I enter booth at the Council of Europe or European Commission or kind of world institution, you have Roma from many countries. And I'm translating and I'm looking at them. Everybody is smiling. Why? Because they understand. I'm using in very nice way all the dialects, trying to purify our language. I'm doing same in studio. I have here, I forgot to send you, Debbie, my translation about the extremely political book from Huub van Baar. He asked me very much to translate resume in Romani. And now I look there and I'm smiling. I said, how I can do it? Everybody can do it. One day when you come to my radio, you will learn these things. It's about to learn. It's nothing about to know. You can't know if you don't learn. So those things we do still today. I showed this app. It's an incredible app. It's called Radio Garden. More than 10,000 radio stations, among is Romani radios. And the management of this app sits in Amsterdam, and I build friendship. We should have our Radio Garden. Today, thanks to media technologies, you can be your own journalist of your own program. At the moment you are in the front of the screen and microphone, you have a responsibility, Mr. President.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you, Orhan. It's very inspired. Branko, I have same question because I repeat again because we have here three different generation, three different perspective here. Do you believe that we can make that? Okay, but it's your from your perspective. But Branko and me, we are in some middle generation. Do you believe? And young generation, I will ask something other question. But do you believe that we will make a radio with standardized language, but according to currently situation about standardization of Roma language?
Yes, absolutely. I said that my experience I share with you, and absolutely agree with my friend Orhan. Of course, the help of our brothers who are dealing with language, linguists, Hristo Kjučukov is among us, as I noticed and as I heard, and other guys who are very much in language, in Roman standardization, and so on, could help, and that help will be okay and welcome. But even without that, we made experience that we can understand each other. The main function of language within the journalism is to be understandable, to share the information, to transmit the information. Of course, there is a beauty of language. This is the other part and approach of that, what are we dealing with. But the main thing is to be understandable, and we have that already. What Orhan says actually is a matter of acknowledgement of our own language. I cannot understand you, Dalibore, if you speak 10% Romani language and 90% Gajikane according to your surroundings from Bosnia. I am from Turkey. Like Orhan said, I speak 20% Romanes and 80% Turkish. We cannot understand each other because it is not Romanes. That's the problem. Let's learn our language, but our language with our vocabulary, without grammar. We have that in books, in institutions already, if you want. And then we can understand each other, even we can approve the beauty of our language, not only to share information.
Great, Branko. Thank you. Thank you. Before we are almost, we have five minutes. I says that I will ask a young generation some other question. Is it important for you, for all of you, for young generation to have one big media on Roma language? Radio, television, online portal, whatever, but one media, regional big media like I don't know, BBC, Al Jazeera, and etc. on Roma language. You can ask, or maybe Daniel, or
If anybody wants to talk, they can. I think standardization is a nice goal to have, but if I know Roma, I know that many Roma are very proud of the way they speak and think that they speak the best way possible, myself included. And so it would be difficult from a social perspective, I would say, to create something. I guess I'm answering a different question, but still, to have like a standardized version. But to answer the question of if there is just like a big media production like Al Jazeera or BBC, I think that would be potentially very helpful. I think it would be nice in a way because it could be something that, you know, they could refer to and that could produce, again, content that young Roma could either relate to or actually care to watch the whole video or read the whole thing. Because ultimately, how do I say this? Let me just collect my thoughts. Ultimately, I think, again, it really just needs to boil down to what is relevant to Roma. And if this production, I don't know what to call it, organization, actually focuses on, rather than, the upper class, as I'm going to call the elite, topics and all of these things that are not necessarily relatable to Roma around the world. If it just focuses on that, it won't necessarily gain the traction we want it to. And as Branko said about even just talking about working with iron and having these talking about these things for people who do that, because there are many Roma who still work in the occupations of our older generations. So something that is relevant to that would be very helpful, and something that not necessarily just how to make money or how to do it better or anything like that, more so just even again, I'm going to bring it back to like Romano empowerment. A great way to bring people forward is to grow the voices, to grow the wants of people to actually want to talk about these things. Because if they just have these unrelatable things, they're going to say it's just Gage, it's just Roma that became Gage and they're talking for us. And I've seen that a lot. My family says things about that all the time. My friends say that all the time. So I think that it needs to be something that appeases to, as much as it could be unrelatable to people right now, that quote unquote majority.
You have a question? But we don't have a time. We have a 30 seconds now, I think. Yeah. Okay.
So I think it is almost necessary to have a big media outlet for Roma people, because it is a source. It would be a source of this light, sort of in a darkness of shame for many people, and enlightenment, as in to educate the people around the Roma around the world. And also a way of empowerment and to give voices to the stories of people who cannot be heard, who are on the fringes of society, who never had an opportunity to have their voice be heard. So it's also a way of building this identity and a stronghold in a sort of sense of center of, yes, I am Roma, and there is this the sense of community worldwide, because I think it is really fragmented at this point. And we don't really have to talk about like standardization and like all of the different dialects and so on, but like really the media representation in today's world means creating an image of what it means to be Roma, and there is a lot of things that we can be proud of, and and the media can really add to the sense of identity of the individuals that they can use then in their work, in their activism, and just being proud of who they are wherever they walk in. So
Thank you very much. Thank you, Daniel. We can conclude now maybe this discussion. We have actually conclusion here that we find some point on intersection where media on one side and people who dedicated to language translators, linguistics, can find something common and work together on one goal. So we have a goal to make a standardization of our language on one side, and to make some great media outlet. So maybe for next couple years we will talk here about how we planned a couple of years ago about it. But it's necessary to work together, to give our best, and to make something special and something strong and something great for next generation. Branko, thank you very much. Orhan, especially thank for you. One of member of new generation, on young generation. Thank you, Nico. You're very. I'm very proud because you are here among us. And on the end, my Hedina, thank you very, very much. So you're inspiring me for everything. And thank you, Debbie. So you give us opportunity to speak about media and about language in media. Thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you so much to our panelists, to our speakers, and to those who joined us online. We're going to go ahead, close up the Zoom, close up the space. I just wanted to say that we are recording this and it is being live streamed to YouTube, so you can access it at any point in time now after this. Thank you again for joining us here, and we will see you tomorrow.